the excuses start building up. I kind of feel sorry for the guy. He kind of looks like a monster now.
Yeah, man, he looks sickly. And the thing is, if you look at his hands are still his natural color, but his face, for whatever reason, is literally translucent. It's man, I don't know. I mean, I'm all about, like, I'm not a gawker or anything like that. You know, I'm usually pretty mindful of, you know, myself staring or looking or acting weird, but man, that's just screwed up, dude. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would definitely be staring, unfortunately. I'm a starer, so I'd probably be caught staring. You know, I'd have one of those faces where I was, like, between... I mean, it'd be like a face somebody with, like, Bell's palsy would have when if I saw Sosa at an event.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like, okay, so let's go to, you know, Canseco toss his finger on the jackpot here. You know, and now he's putting it up on auction, and, you know, if anybody's got the money, I would have to say that Oakland right now is probably out of the bidding. They're a team where, you know, I'm not sure if they're really going to be adding too much money. They really do need to add some offense, obviously. Missing a 3-4 hitter, and I don't think Jose is going to be able to come back and do that for him. But they do need to find somebody. And, you know, I'm not sure if they're going to be able to find those prospects, because right now they're pretty heavy in discussions with several teams about trading Jeff Samardzija, one of which being the White Sox, and who exactly the White Sox would be able to offer up to them. I'm still kind of, you know, curious. Haven't really seen too many names thrown out there, and obviously, you know, I don't think they're going to be, you know, trading Chris Sale, but it sounds like Jose Quintana's pretty much there to stay. Maybe if they're looking to dump John Danks, that's a guy who's owed quite a bit of money over the next couple of years here, so that might be a move. But, you know, one of Oakland's big pieces that they're missing right now, and it has been a hole for several years, obviously second base, but in particular has been shortstop. So whether or not they're going to be able to pull off a move for a 32-year-old, Alexi Ramirez, that'll be determined here. But I think if you had a shortstop to Oakland's team, and you know, especially a guy like Alexi Ramirez, who's able to provide you a little bit of offense, might not be that 3-4 hitter, you know, that you're necessarily looking for. But you know, bringing in Brett Lowry or Laurie, you know, I don't know how he's going to work out, but you know, giving us all of his health concerns, but Oakland might be able to do some good things here. You know, and I don't know did you catch that video by chance? That little girl sobbing of Laurie getting traded to Oakland?
No.
Oh, she was destroyed. He's going to be so great. And she's just crying, completely devastated. And I had to repost it, you know, with the hashtag, you know, telling her, like, hey, been there, kid. Like, don't worry about it, you know, because there's been quite a few trades, man. Even when Harold Baines came around for the second time with the White Sox and they moved him to Baltimore, man, I was in tears. I was devastated when they got rid of everybody. Him, you know, Roberto Hernandez, Wilson Alvarez, all these guys, Alex Fernandez, everybody was gone. I was destroyed.
I don't understand with Oakland, though. You know, they took a shot getting Lester. I feel like, you know, getting rid of Cespedes, I feel like they're going to be kind of left with their tail between their legs. I mean, that lineup, they mysteriously get rid of Donaldson. It's just weird. Some of the things that they're doing right now are just odd to me, and some of the stuff just seems inexplicable what they're doing.
Yeah, you know, and Billy Beane needs to make a splashy move. I mean, what do you think, kind of to make up for this, you know, goofy trade, getting rid of Cespedes, and then everything just kind of fell apart. You know, he's got to make some kind of impact move. I don't know whether it's going to be on the international market or what, or you know, another big trade. But something needs to happen here. You know, because you know, after moving all those pieces that he did last season, really the only guy he has to show for going into this year is Jeff Samardzija. Everybody else is gone. So that one-time shot just kind of blew up in his face, and you know, obviously Lester's not coming back. They might re-sign Hamill. That might work out for them, but they definitely need to do something to it. You know, at least kind of keep up with you know, some of the other charging teams in the division. Look at Seattle, what they're doing. They had Nelson Cruz. That was the guy they flirted with last year, and finally were able to bring him in. And so, you know, they did that, and they ended up re-signing, you know, I thought it was a little bit too early to be Kyle Seager, $100 million. Yeah. But knowing what a big part of the offense he was, you know, you kind of had to.
Yeah, the Seager, where the hell is all this Mariners money coming from? And I mean, I like the moves, but again, the Seager one is like, I'm just confused. $100 million. Like, I mean, granted, I don't follow a lot of baseball, but I had never heard of him. And he's making $100 million.
Oh no, and that's the kind of the craziest thing about it. But he was a very solid player, and it was one of the only guys that were actually producing for them offensively. And it's they did pick up Boston Jackson last year in that trade. He's going to be a free agent after this upcoming season, but that was a guy that's going to help them out a lot. And it's going to be great having Nelson Cruz there. So having a full year of Jackson, Cruz in the outfield, they dealt Michael Saunders. But they still have Dustin Ackley out there. So, I mean, their outfield is pretty formidable. And now having Cano in the lineup and just kind of seeing how they're going to develop Brad Miller will be interesting. And so it's like I said, overall, their offense is really coming along. And, especially it's going to be nice for them at least going in with, the starting rotation that they have.
Well, it's funny with the NL or AL West, it kind of used to be like the NFC West, where it was the biggest joke in baseball. It was just like the NFC West was the biggest joke in football for so many years. And it's kind of the tides are starting to turn. And I don't think the Rangers weren't as, they were terrible last year. But I think they can turn things around. I mean, if they get healthy, Ron Washington isn't having press conferences talking about him sleeping around. I figure that this thing could turn around, and I think this could be a pretty good 4-team division.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, Houston's on their way up to it, and Texas has some different moves they're going to make. Houston's going to add some money, so they're going to have a little bit more to spend now, so they're going to be able to look for, some veterans to fill out, maybe some left side of their infield, maybe some offense, also maybe add another veteran starter or reliever, but they're not, they're no longer in the business of just signing and dealing guys. I think they kind of feel like they're about ready to start making a bigger push. Much like Kansas City is, even though they're not going to commit a lot of extra money, I still think they're going to go out there and, find somebody to replace Shields, maybe add a little bit more relief help, but they've already re-signed Frazier and have done a few things. And so, again, just kind of seeing what's going to happen now with the Central is going to be interesting. But, with bringing back Frazier, bringing back Hochevar. Hochevar's coming off an injury. But, that's going to be a guy that, they kind of know him better and know how far along he is with his rehab, having the inside word. They're going to be pretty confident going forward. And, adding, Brian Flynn, he's really going to help out their relievers. So, again, they've continued to solidify that core group that they had. And, even though they had to deal with Aaron Crow, it's still a good-looking spot for them, especially given the fact that they haven't really lost much on offense, and they'll be looking to add a little bit more because I'm just not sure if they're really down, as big of a home run hitting team as they ended up turning out to be the way Moustakas came on hot. Same thing with Hosmer. I think Hosmer might be able to find that groove again. But, Moustakas, I'm not sure. Well, they brought in Ryan Roberts from Arizona. They brought in Ryan Jackson. These are all guys that are going to be able to help out their bench and kind of help solidify their offense going forward to kind of compete with the Detroits. And, Cleveland's probably going to be better. The White Sox have already been, relatively aggressive, in terms of bringing in, Adam LaRoche. They brought in J.B. Shuck, which is a, former Angels prospect, ended up going over to Cleveland. And then, added some pieces to their bullpen and Joe Savory, Nelky Garcia, Zach Duke. So, it's going to be interesting to see how the Sox are going to be able to compete, alongside Cleveland, Kansas City, and Detroit. As for Minnesota, they got a long way to go.
They have a ways to go. But my take on this division is I don't have a take on this division. I mean, it's just at some point you assume Detroit's going to take a major step back. I mean, they got the pitching, but, if Scherzer doesn't come back, who knows? With Kansas City, if that bullpen doesn't bounce back, if they're still tired from last year, there's going to be problems. They're getting rid of Butler. I feel like he was a good guy to have in the clubhouse. And, who knows how Kansas City deals with again, now that the expectations are, okay, we made it to the World Series, not just, oh, hey, this is our year. There's legit expectations, not just, hey, this team.
Yeah, I mean, it was just make it close to the playoffs. and like to make it into the playoffs, that's one thing. To make it all the way to the World Series, that's really setting the bar high, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's a little too high for this team. Do it back-to-back years, I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh, yeah. And now, kind of looking over, into the East here, I think Baltimore, they're a team where, what they're going to do with Chris Davis, that's a guy that they might be able to kind of move. Diaz is probably on his way out. They brought in Alex Cezanne, but right now their outfield looks pretty weak. They've lost quite a few pieces, in terms of Andrew Miller going to the Yankees, lost Nelson Cruz to Seattle, Markakis to Atlanta, Xavier Avery to Detroit. So, there's a lot of holes that need to be fixed, and so they need to figure out somebody to work out there in the corner outfield for them. On top of adding, maybe a little bit of depth to the bench and a floor hitter. But, that's an interesting situation because Toronto's making a charge, obviously bringing in Russell Martin. The Yankees went out and acquired Didi Gregorius. That's a big deal for them. And on top of adding Andrew Miller. And so, a lot of these, the teams that are right behind them are making a big charge, not to mention everything that Boston's done to, up the ante in terms of their offense. And so we'll see. I think Tampa Bay, they're going to go through probably, a relatively considerable downgrade this year, trying to figure out how things are going to work out, not having the big dog behind the dish anymore, with Nate Freeman calling the shots. So that's going to be pretty interesting. But I think overall, what's going to happen with that Boston offense is going to be, pretty much, the telling factor as to who's going to win the NL or AL East this year.
Well, my take is, I think Tampa, you can make all these moves with players, but their strength was the guys who they had in place, a Joe Madden, a Andrew Friedman. They had these, guys that put the pieces that were there in place in positions to win. And they don't have those guys, the manager, the GM, the president of baseball operations. They don't have that anymore. I think they're going to take a giant step back with these guys that, know the ins and outs of baseball like those two guys did. That's
right.
Going to be not losing David Price or anything. It's going to be having these super intelligent people running the organization.
Yeah, well, I mean, Mark Silverman, he's been there, or Matt Silverman, he's been there for a little while. So he has a pretty good grasp. And there are a few, I know a lot of the other front office guys kind of stuck around. And so at least they'll have a lot of those guys, and they'll have their analytics department still in place and all their proprietary statistics and metrics that they use. So they have all that still in place. But it's just kind of figuring out, having Kevin Cash and a first-time manager, running this particular ball club, I think is going to be a mistake. They should have went with someone that, maybe might have cost them a little bit more money, but, just some veteran manager. I mean, there was a handful of guys out there. I mean, we even heard Jim Tracy's name get brought back up, and so it's just a matter of finding the right guy to call the shots, and I'm not sure if they did that. And, they're probably going to pay the price because they're going to see Boston, zip right past them right away. They're probably, another worse first year for them. And then, like I said, what Toronto's been able to do, and kind of adding a couple pieces. They added Greg Burke to the bullpen, which is going to help them out a little bit. Brought in Marco Estrada from Milwaukee, and then on top of the rest of the pitching staff they have, with Stroman and Dickey and Burley and Hutchinson. These are all guys, especially with Nolan and Norris on their way up. And Sanchez, Aaron Sanchez, he's a guy who worked out great for them in the bullpen. But, long term, I think they're still thinking he's going to be a starter. And right now, their offense is pretty scary. When you come down and actually look at it between, Russell Martin and Encarnacion, with Jose Reyes, all these guys, so they're still going to need to figure out their outfield situation, not to mention Batista in there too. But once they figure that out, I think really between Toronto and Boston, they're going to make the hardest push here, at that crown, because I think New York, even though they might be able to kind of, move some pieces around, I don't know if they're really going to be able to put it all together, in time. And same thing with Baltimore. I think Baltimore has too many pieces that they're missing. That's going to end up being an issue.
Yeah, and I feel like the Blue Jays should change their name to the Dark Horses, because they're always that dark horse going into every season. It's like, look out for the Blue Jays, and then they miss the playoffs every time. They need to change their team name to the Dark